Greetings, citizens. Hey you beautiful creepy human being you. Welcome to my channel and welcome to today's true crime video. I'm so happy we could meet like this. I'm so happy that somehow in all of this craziness that we are forced to deal with on the day-to-day, today you and I were able to find each other on this crazy little planet that we call home. My name is Brittany or Bratterstein, whichever you prefer, and today we're going to be discussing a man named John Lawrence Markle. This is a family annihilator that murdered his wife and his two daughters. But before we get started, if you have not yet had the pleasure, please make sure to join the Brat Pack by subscribing and ringing that bell. I put out a new video every single week and I would love to hang out with you. Yes, you specifically you, but I can only do that if you join the Brat Pack and become one of us. One of us, one of us, one of us. Alright, now that I'm done begging you to join my cult, we can go ahead and get into this video. Now, this video is one of my condensed crime cases. Basically, these cases are, these stories, these videos are for people who want short form content. People who want to get in, get out, or get on their way. Or just for people who want to see a little more of me throughout the week. But if this is not your thing, that's fine. Don't worry. Come back on Monday because that is reserved for deep dives, two-parters, my super long videos that people who've been here a long time have come to know and love. So today I'm going to tell you the entire story of John Markle, the man who murdered his wife Christine and his two daughters Amy and Suzanne. And at the end of this video I want you to answer the question of the day. And that is this: what do you believe was John Markle's motive for murdering his family? Given his circumstances, what made him take them with him? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments below after I give you all the details of this case. Now, with all of that said, come gather around and let me tell you the story of John Markle, the family annihilator who murdered his wife and his two daughters. Now, I actually want to start this video off with a question for you, and that is this. Are you familiar with the Academy Award-winning actress Mercedes McCambridge? Did you know that her son, John Lawrence Markle, murdered his wife and two daughters before taking his own life on November 16th, 1987? Well, I'm going to tell you all about that right now. John Markle was born December 25th, 1941 in Hollywood, California. Beautiful Christmas miracle this little baby was for his family, I assume. His father was William, and William was a writer, and his mother was Mercedes, a woman who started as a radio star but would go on to become an Academy Award-winning actress. She had several large roles, including winning the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress in the movie All the King's Men, the 1949 film that was also named Best Picture, and she was the voice of the demon in The Exorcist, the demon that possessed the little girl Regan. She was the voice of that demon. And you know what? This is actually the second video I've done that involved The Exorcist, because there was another guy who was in that movie who turned out to be a serial killer. I don't know if he was actually a serial killer. If you want to watch that movie, I will try to remember to link it, but second movie involving The Exorcist. People say that movie's cursed. Maybe it is. Now, John's parents divorced in 1946 after just 7 years of being together, so John would have been about 5 years old. His mother then went on to remarry. She met a man who was a director of film and TV shows. His name was Fletcher Markle, and this man went on to adopt John, effectively making him John Markle. Now, this relationship seemed like it was really good at first. The two had a lot in common, and he treated her super well. It seemed like a match made in heaven, but this relationship too did not last, and after 10 years of them being together, they too divorced, and now that left just John and his mother being a dynamic duo, just the two of them. Just the two of them. John was said to be a brilliant man. He earned a master's from UCLA and then continued his graduate studies in economics at UCLA as well, ultimately earning a PhD. And then he went on to get a job at Solomon Brothers in Dallas, Texas, their Dallas, Texas office, And this was an American investment bank, and this was one of the largest on Wall Street for a time. So this was like a good job, like Wall Street, big bank, bucks, bro, you know what I mean? Like that's what I associate Wall Street with, is dollar bills. Yeah, so he's doing good at work. He did really well at school. It seemed like he was doing well at life. And then he also was doing well in love, because while attending UCLA, he met a girl named Christine Mull, and this girl would go on to become his wife and then give birth to him. She birthed herself, quite frankly, two beautiful daughters. Amy Michelle Markle, born first in 1974, and then in 1978, they had their second baby, another little girl named Suzanne Marie Markle. And Christine was said to be a really good mom, very attentive, very involved in her daughters' lives, she was there for all their school things, all their extracurriculars. Just by all accounts, she was like a wonderfully involved mother. The family ended up settling in Little Rock, Arkansas in 1979, where John went on to work for Stevens Inc., which was a privately held independent financial services firm, and he became the vice president after only 8 months of working there. And he was the only associate who had ever moved up that quickly. Like, he was super, super good at his job. His early performances and accounts were described as exceptional. The family was said to be doing really well. They looked like they were doing really well in their new home, which is like a big, beautiful house. I'll try to remember to put a photo up because it was gorgeous. I was like, damn. I like that kind of architecture though, to be fair. But they were said to be doing really well. They were private, like they were like a private family. They didn't spread all their business all over with all the neighbors, but they were still very involved in community activities as well. The girls, though they had a lot of money, right, went to public school, and they and their mother were involved in a range of community activities, and they were close. The whole family was said to be super close. John's mother even moved to Little Rock to be closer to her son. It was a happy, tight-knit family unit. Like, to all outward appearances, they were a normal, happy family. Friends called John a devoted family man, and everyone seemed to be living their best lives. But like so often in the cases we covered, things were not as good as they seemed. And it appears that John got himself into a little bit of trouble at work. So some of his accounts came into question in 1987, where they started looking at it and they were like, things don't look quite right here. Things look a little bit suspicious. So they actually put him on medical leave in October of 1987. And it wasn't really medical leave because they were like low-key investigating him a little bit, but he was a really good worker. He was like one of their best people. So in case it could be salvaged, they didn't want to like tarnish his name, it seems at least. So they put him on medical leave and they cited his heart because he had actually had a heart attack shortly before this happened. I can't remember how long before, but it was a fairly recent thing. So they put him on medical leave for that. And he probably had a heart attack due to all the stress he was under, since he was lying through his teeth and stealing a lot of money. Unfortunately though, things didn't get better for John because he ended up getting fired when it came out that, like, during the investigation, they discovered that he had been embezzling a lot of money by placing it. I don't understand finance, but he had been taking money from the company and basically putting it into his mom's accounts because his mom had accounts through his company. And it turns out that he had stolen about $1 million. He had taken this and transferred it into his mother's accounts, and then he had withdrawn like half of that for himself and just like took it. Which is like bold. I'm gonna say it. That's a bold move, but he was like, I can fix this. Like, I can fix this. So before he was fired, while he was still on leave, he had come up with a plan. He actually came up with 2 plans to fix what he had done so he could stay with the company and not face legal action, essentially. He was going to pay restitution back to the company, but both of these plans would need to involve his mom's help because she had like the financial backing in order to help him. But she was like, oh fuck no. Basically, she was kind of like, listen, like, by all accounts, she didn't know he was doing this, and she was kind of like, you got yourself into this mess, now you need to get yourself out of this mess. I am not going to be helping you with this. Like, first off, the nerve. You were using my accounts to do something illegal, which I would be kind of pissed about, I'm not going to lie. And then to be like, now I need your money to fix this. Like, it was kind of, she just wasn't down with that sickness. So he's kind of fucked because his company is prepared to take legal action against him, but they want to give him a chance. They're like, hey, you pay us back this money. We're giving you 30 days to do so. If not, we're gonna have to do something about this because you've literally stolen from us. But since he didn't have the money, because somehow he had spent all that money he had stolen, and since his mother wouldn't help him, he was essentially screwed. And 3 days after being fired, he would murder his entire family. At about 4 a.m. on November 16th, 1987, a man named Richard Lawrence received a phone call. This was the attorney for John Markle, and on the other end of the phone line was John Markle, calling his attorney at 4 a.m., which, first off, that's already like, something's up. And then John simply said, come to my house, and hung up on his attorney. And his attorney was like, what the fuck is going on? So he tried to call back twice and wasn't able to get through, and felt so strongly that something was wrong that he called police. When Richard and the police arrived at the house located at 1820 Main Street in Little Rock, Arkansas at 4:17 a.m., the house was dark except for a light glowing in the downstairs window. Finding the front door open, the officer went inside, and what they first see is a briefcase sitting there with a letter attached to it addressed to his attorney. Inside, they find notes for Richard, John's diary, his new handwritten will, a letter to his mother, personal documents, and a bunch of money. Then they found John's body. He was in the downstairs study, and he was laying, on the ground, and he had bullet wounds on either side of his head and 2 guns lying beside him. So it appears he shot himself with both guns on either side of the head, taking his own life. On his desk, they found a suicide note, and on the ground, they found a horrifying Halloween mask that was splattered in blood and determined to have been worn by him while he murdered his entire family. They then move through the house and they find that he had done just that. He had killed his entire family, and they first found his 2 daughters. The girls were found together in the same bed. It appears that they had been sleeping together in the same bed when they were murdered. And it was thought that they were doing so because they were afraid of like a very loud thunderstorm that was going on outside. It was so loud that neighbors didn't even hear the gunshots, but I'm not sure. I was also wondering if maybe Christine was killed first, because I didn't find who was killed first, but I was thinking, what if Christine was killed first and the girls heard the gunshot, so they ran and like got in a bed together because they were scared and that's what happened. But I guess we'll never really know. It could also be because it was like a loud thunderstorm, but it could also be that they didn't hear anything and they were just sleeping together. They were afraid of the thunderstorm and they fell asleep, and that they didn't hear anything, even if Christine was killed first, because the girls were both actually drugged, which we will get into later. But either way, the girls have been shot multiple times. Amy, who was 13 years old and in 8th grade, was shot 4 times. And Suzanne, who was 9 years old and in 4th grade, was shot 5 times. Next, his wife Christine, 45-year-old Christine, was dead in the 3rd floor master bedroom, lying in her own bed, and she had been shot 3 times. They also found a total of 18 guns in the house, but it was only either 2 or 3 that were involved in the actual murder. It was the 2 guns that were found with John, and then there was another gun found in the upstairs bathroom that I believe was used in the murders as well. So all the victims had multiple gunshot wounds. John had those 2 shots on either side of his head, like that he simultaneously shot himself on both sides at the same time. Like, it was a brutal scene. And as I said, they were all drugged. The daughters, the mother, and John, all of them were drugged. They all had Elavil, I cannot pronounce it, Elavil, Elavil in their system, which is an antidepressant that causes drowsiness. So this could explain how they were all found in their own beds. In the study where John was found dead, as I said, there was a suicide note found on the desk. So the suicide note was dated November 16th, and the time on the note was 2:30 a.m. So this would have been before he even called his attorney. And this note said, in part, and I quote, "Let it hereby be stated as true that I, John L. Markle, murdered my wife and 2 children, Amy and Suzanne, then committed suicide myself. My wife had no knowledge or part in this. I think the evidence shall so provide." But this letter didn't answer the one question that people always have in these kind of questions, like, why? Why did you murder your wife and your kids before you killed yourself? Why did you do that? We see this a lot, and I feel like we're always wondering why these things happen. I feel like there are always a couple of common denominators in these situations, but forensic psychologists say that there are several reasons why fathers specifically will kill their entire families when they plan to kill themselves. There were many reasons that they listed, but some that were listed were loss of control over the family's circumstances, a belief that his family cannot survive without him, or feeling overwhelmed and feeling that there's no way out of their current situation. So any of those could have been a reason why he did what he did. And even the county coroner, which I found this to be very interesting because I don't feel like I've seen this, at least that I haven't read it in a case that I've covered, where a county coroner threw in their 2 cents on what they believed that the motive was. I found that to be weird, but the county coroner said of their belief of what this motive, the motive for these murders was, and I quote, "It was an act of macabre benevolence. He wanted to spare the girls the publicity." That's a theory, right? Like that he didn't want his family to be embarrassed of his failure and him being arrested and him going to jail. That definitely seems possible. But what was John's motive, right? There were some clues that were left in his many writings. There was the suicide note. There was a 12-page letter he left for his mother, and there was also his diary, and all of these things held some little bits of information that could say why he did what he did. It appears that John was very angry and embarrassed at the position his life had found itself in, basically the consequences of his actions, from him getting in trouble and losing his job, from embezzling all of that money. He felt ashamed and worried that his children and his wife would have no money. They'd have no inheritance if he was to die. They'd have no inheritance after he was gone because he had squandered like all of the family money. He said in his diary that his wife told him that he always put himself first and his family second, and that he agreed that that is what he did. And he wrote this passage, right? This passage about him feeling embarrassed and his wife telling him that he put himself first and his worries about not having an inheritance for his kids just 3 weeks before committing the murders. He seemed to be really struggling with all of this because by all accounts, and this is what's wild, it's always so wild in these cases to hear this, but it appears that he like really loved his kids. That's what's weird. Everyone said like he loved his kids. He even had like a nicer car, but he chose to drive this like beaten up truck that his daughters had like hand painted. He had allowed them to hand paint it, and he drove this around instead of his nicer car because he loved his kids. And in addition to all of this, it seemed like it was very planned. It wasn't like an I snapped in the last minute and freaked out and killed my family kind of thing. This was something that he had thought about and did, you know what I mean? Like the handwritten will that he had done. Before writing the handwritten, back up. He had a will that was executed in 1985. He voided that will and then wrote a handwritten will and like had that, you know, stamped, signed, delivered, I'm yours. He had that made the official will. And in it, he had taken his wife and his kids out of it. And this was dated, I think, November 9th, which is a week before he killed his family. So he knew he was going to do this all this time and was just acting normal. Like, oh. Now, I mentioned John had left a really long letter to his mother. Well, it appears that John had a lot of issues with his mother. He was very bitter towards her, but he also craved her attention and her acceptance. In the letter, he wrote about how upset he was with his mother and how he didn't feel like she was a good mother. He said that she was inattentive and uncaring, and he said that she was often like not involved. He would be left alone with relatives or friends, and she was never around. And if she was, he would just see her drunk and fighting with her co-stars. And she had since gotten clean and moved past that part in her life, like the drinking and things like that. But the damage to him had been done. He blamed her for turning out the way he did and talked about the trauma he had of finding her after her suicide attempts, because apparently he had found her after at least one suicide attempt. And in addition to that, he wanted her love, he wanted her attention, and he wrote that he had won several awards in college, but that his mother never seemed to pay attention and never seemed to notice anything good that he did. Now, how did this letter make her feel? How did all of this murder, the suicide, him blaming her, how did it make her feel? We don't know, because she refused to speak publicly about it. Which, honestly, I get. What could you say to that? Like, what can you say? Like, I did my best. Motherhood is hard. He saw it differently than I did. Like, it's not her fault. You know what I mean? Even if she was, like, not a great mother, she's not responsible for him killing his family. You know what I mean? There are so many factors that go into why someone does what they do. And maybe that was part of his decision making, part of what made him the way he was, but it's not in totality. You know what I mean? That's it. Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know why he did what we did. I wish we had more insight into this man's brain, because it seems like there's more there that he just didn't say and that we'll now never know. Like, there are a lot of creepy references in this case, a lot of things related to horror, and I wonder if it was a coincidence or intentional, because, okay, he was so unhappy with his mother, right? Like, he had so many things, all of the things he did revolved around her and impressing her and things like that. And his mother did the voice of the exorcist demon, Reagan's demon, the exorcist. Cool, great. He did that, she did the voice of that demon. And now there are all these horror references around this murder. And I wonder if it was coincidence or if it was him sort of nodding to her while committing his crime. Like, okay, he was fired on Friday the 13th. That same night, he rented A Nightmare on Elm Street for his family to watch. And that video was in the VCR at the time of the murders, along with the TV that just played black and white static, like in the Poltergeist. And then he went on to kill his family while wearing a Halloween mask on a dark and stormy night. Like, that's a lot of big coincidences if they weren't done intentionally. And I don't know, maybe I'm just looking too into this because I am such a horror buff, but it seems like everyone's looking really far into this, because when you look into this case, this is an aspect that is reported on and discussed a lot, so that's why I'm mentioning it, because it does have my wheels turning. Like, I don't think there's a such thing as curses and, like, evil and things like that, but I do think it's possible that a man who was obsessed with his mother, who played a very huge role in a very huge popular movie, if he was also very interested in horror, which it seems that by all accounts he was, this could be a way for him to be like, it's because of you. It's for you. I did it all for you, Damien. You know what I mean? Like, that kind of thing. But to me, it seems more likely that this was an unhinged, overstressed, overworked mama's boy who felt like a failure most of his life from living in his mother's shadow. And when he got caught for not being his most amazing, fantastic, successful self, but instead an embezzler, and that he was doing it with his mom's accounts, by all things, that was just too much for somebody who had always been trying to get her approval. And then when he confirmed that he didn't have it, that he would never have her approval, because even when he was facing jail time, she refused to help him out, that he couldn't take it, it was too much for him, and he just snapped. And then I also think it's possible that another contributing factor could be that he had had a bad head injury. I feel like in so many of these cases where somebody kills their family, a lot of times it's more discussed in serial killers, but a lot of the times when you hear about people killing people, they've suffered a head injury at some times before, especially when it seems to come from nowhere, you know what I mean? Like, it's not a heat of the moment thing, it's just more of, I don't know how to explain what I'm saying, but I think you understand what I'm saying. And John Markle did suffer from a head injury. He had gotten in a bad car accident that resulted in a bad skull injury years prior, so maybe that had something to do with it as well. It's probably a combination of a lot of things, and we'll never know exactly why people do the things that they do. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know why he did what he did, but I'm curious what you guys think. I'm curious what your guys' theories are down below. So now let's revisit that question of the day, and that was this. What do you believe John Markle's motive was for murdering his wife and his 2 daughters before killing himself? Like, why didn't he just kill himself if he was going to kill himself? Let me know all of your thoughts in the comments below. But with that said, that is the story of the Markle family murders. I hope you found this case to be interesting and informative, and I hope I gave you all the information you would want, you know, in this short form. And of course, just thank you for remembering Christine, Amy, and Suzanne with me today. Before you leave, please don't forget to let me know what case you'd like to see me cover in the future. As you know, I have a long list of cases, and every time you put one on the list, I put it down with your name next to it so I can cover it. And if I do cover it, I'll give you a shout out because I know you're filled with good ideas and good taste. Otherwise, you would not be here. Before you leave, please don't forget to join the Brat Pack by subscribing and ringing the bell. I put out a new video every single week, sometimes 2 a week like this week, and I would love to hang out with you. Yes, you specifically, you. And if you want to hang out more consistently, all my social media is listed down below, along with a link to my merch store and to my membership where you can get early access to videos, occasional live streams, polls, things like that. And now with all of that said, I just want to thank you for being here when you could literally be anywhere else in the world. That is tight. You are tight. Please stay safe and be a better person than you were yesterday, and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye.